Please buy my bike, ma'am. My mom hasn't eaten in 2 days. That's what stopped me cold in the middle of Mariner's Bluff groceries, digging a bruise into my arm, uniform sticking to my back, rules ringing in my head like a metronome. Be punctual, be professional, be invisible. I turned anyway, and there she was, a little girl with tassels on a turquoise bike and a cardboard sign that said, "For sale, one shoe untied." Chin up, like the truth itself was heavy, and she was holding it with both hands. Under the live oak, a woman was slumped against the trunk with a thin blanket, and empty hands on a grown woman mean there's nothing left to barter. You know what I mean. I gave the girl Lily my last $30 and told her to keep her joy. We walked the food over, the woman lifted her face and my stomach dropped. Elena, a cook from the Whitmore estate, the house where I scrub floors while Mr. Family Values gives interviews about dignity. She swallowed bread like it needed instructions, then whispered that her last paycheck had been adjusted for supplies. She never saw Lydia in HR. Smiled when she said, "It called it business, and in that moment, something old in me, the part that learned to swallow unfair like it was medicine, just quit." The Whitmore place is a wedding cake pretending to be a home, white columns, perfect hedges, a gate that chirps like a friendly lie. Inside the kitchen gleams like a spaceship, cheeses arranged like museum pieces, and I stared at my reflection in the chrome mixer and said, "Not today," out loud. Mrs. Finch, head housekeeper, slid a brass key onto the counter, like she was scolding me with one hand and blessing me with the other. Old office bottom drawer, don't make a habit of it. Before sunrise, the estate was quiet in that rich way where air costs money not to move. I turned the key, pulled files, found Elena's. Thicker than the rest. Termination for failure to comply, an incident report for theft that read like bad fiction. A signature that looked like her name was wearing a cheap Halloween wig, and behind it, a catering receipt pushed under her name with initials LC at the bottom. Lydia Crane, and yeah, that happened. I slid the folder under my jacket, my heart thudding like a loose dryer. Met Elena back under the tree, put proof in her hands, watched shame drain out of her eyes, and anger take its place. Then my phone buzzed with a number I didn't know. "I have more Harbor Park Fountain, 6 a.m. He was there at dawn, grease-ground hands that say I work for a living. Caleb, former groundskeeper, accused of stealing tools right after the cameras accidentally went down. He handed me a copy of a check from the house food budget to the Whitmore Legacy Fund user approval code, traced to Lydia authorization to Bradley himself, and that's when the puzzle clicked into something you can't unknow. You don't take this to HR when HR is the fox guarding the henhouse in a silk blouse. You take it to someone who knows what to do with names, and Caleb told me where to find him. Rook's Tavern End Stool Bourbon, and a notebook like a shield, Marcus Hale, the reporter who once made a senator cry on live radio. I slid the folder to him, said forged signature, faked charge, diverted funds. "I work the house, my name is Renee, and I am tired," and he smirked without malice and said, "Keep that line if you live through this," then asked for digital logs, voices, witnesses who don't fold. Back at the estate, I waited for the hour, the sunroom turns gold, and Lydia perches with her tablet like an organized angel. She didn't look up when she said, "You don't clean this room today," I said. "I'm not here to clean. I'm here about Elena." Her smile thinned, and she said, "Elena resigned," I said, "on paper. She did in real life. She has a 6-year-old trying to sell a bike to eat that isn't resignation. That's a shove," and we stood there in a quiet that had teeth. She stepped closer with that silk wrapped in steel voice and said, "Do you think anyone will believe a maid over me, a woman who mops floors, over the woman who manages a multi-million-dollar foundation, and my phone was recording warm against my ribs. I let her hear her own words for 10 clean seconds. She went still and promised I'd regret this, and I told her, I regret not starting sooner. Then I walked out before my legs figured out courage and started shaking. Marcus went to print with documents and patterns and quotes, not halos or horns. The headline was dry on purpose. House staffer exposes payroll scheme at Whitmore Estate, and sometimes boring is the safest way to carry dynamite. My phone lit up like a slot machine. Detective Ortiz from Port Camden PD asked for a sit-down. A lawyer named Danica Reed told me on speaker that money would try to buy me fear, would try to shrink me, and paperwork would try to bury me. Pick a none, she said. Whitmore's team filed a defamation suit with an emergency gag order the size of a small car. We stood in front of a judge who could make a liar tap dance just by lifting an eyebrow. Whitmore's attorney sang about reputation and generosity and how the community owed the man grace Danica talked about, a recording of contempt for the truth, a check that begins a trail and the public's right to hear a crime scene breathing in plain sight. The judge denied the gag, simple as that. But the twist, the kind no one writes because it feels too on the nose, walked in wearing flats and a navy dress. Evelyn Whitmore, no pearls, no entourage. Just a sealed envelope and a voice that didn't wobble when she said, I found this in a safe my husband didn't know. I knew about the truth, shouldn't hide in a lockbox. Inside was a ledger in Bradley's own tidy handwriting, dates, amounts, arrows, transfers from house accounts to the foundation, to a shell vendor labeled consulting initials tucked like breadcrumbs, BWW. And the room took one long breath while the judge read it, then referred the matter to the DA and tossed the civil suit against me and Marcus like a bad casserole. Federal charges took months, and life kept being life. I still worked because rent doesn't clap. Elena found a spot at the shelter, and then a small apartment. Lily kept her bike, and later a new one showed up on their porch with a note that said, For the girl who tried to sell her joy. We see you, yeah. I cried over a bicycle, and I'm not embarrassed. Marcus kept digging. April from the contractor's IT team found auto-archived PDFs with metadata that said L. Crane entry. Authorization. Ortiz fed the machine without turning it into a circus, and when I testified I didn't give a speech, I said, I met a little girl trying to sell a bike, and I couldn't keep walking. I told them the drawer wasn't locked. The people were. The jury didn't laugh. They got quiet, and then they got busy. Bradley was convicted on fraud and obstruction, and a charge with a name so long we just called it finally. Lydia took a deal and disappeared into some cul-de-sac that looks like every other one. Evelyn filed for divorce, and people asked me if it felt like victory. The honest answer is, it felt like air after being underwater too long. We started the Root Room in the back of a church, then the Lily Fund, because of course we named it after the kid who had the good idea first. If the world won't help you, help yourself and watch who shows up. We printed pay stubs and circled the thefts they called errors. We sat with women who whispered me too without talking about anything but money. We listened, we taught. We showed people where the locks are and where the keys fit. A mural went up downtown, 3 women in work shirts with tired hands and fierce eyes. Words across the top that I can't take credit for because they belong to everybody now. Truth isn't fragile, it's fire. And strangers stop me in the produce aisle to argue about Evelyn. Was she brave or just late? And I get it. We want clean categories because mess is exhausting. But most of us were taught to stay small in one house or another. And the day you unlock something counts, even if it should have been yesterday. A council seat opened up and people said, and I laughed, because I'm a woman with a label maker, not a politician. Then I realized who better to watch a budget than someone who knows what things are called and where they belong. We ran on 3 words. Dignity is policy, Ms. Dolores brought donuts to the polling place and told everyone I carried her groceries. When her knee went out, we won by 312, and my first ordinance was boring on purpose. Itemized pay stubs for domestic workers, fines for accidental underpayment. Boring keeps the lights on. Developers tried to beautify the East Side, which is code for move. The folks who make you uncomfortable. I hit pause, he got mad, he'll live. And I still clean a couple houses because I like the part where a room takes a breath after it's put right. I don't sneak through side gates anymore. I enter exactly as I am, front door if it's open, side door if it's not. Same spine either way. So here's where I leave it open, not because I don't have opinions, but because I want yours. Was Evelyn brave or late? Did I cross a line, or did I finally walk a straight one? Would you have hit record in that sunroom or kept your head down? What did I miss? What did I get wrong, and what have you seen with your own eyes? The quiet thefts, the loud excuses, the boss who calls it business when it's just taking. Drop a comment and be honest. Argue if you need to tell me where you're watching from and whether you've ever wanted to sell something you loved. Just to get through a week, hit subscribe if you believe dignity shouldn't depend on your job title. Share this with someone who needs to hear they're not small, and if your voice shakes when you speak up, fine. Let it shake, say it anyway, say it louder.